So Chris and I usually make a habit of going out on our Sunday afternoons. We live, in my opinion, on the edge of one of the most beautiful counties in England. But it's been a couple months since we've had time to take a Sunday trip, and yesterday we managed to escape deep into the Peak District under what was a surprisingly warm sun. I asked if we could go to a village called Eyam, or at least that's how I pronounce it. I'd been once before when I was 18, and it was the first village to make me truly fall in love with England. I mean the deep, incurable kind of love. I remember walking down the empty streets as dusk was falling and thinking to myself, I absolutely have to move to England. The famous quote from Tolkien that tells us that not all wanderers are lost rang in my ears as I paid homage to this village that I'd visited 4 years before, this landmark of my 5,000-mile journey across the Atlantic. I was, and have been for quite some time, a hopeless wanderer, and never do I feel more at home than when I'm walking the footpaths of the Derbyshire countryside. There is something else, though, about Eyam that stirs me. Its quiet beauty captivated me because I longed to be nestled in its pleasant green hills, but its history reflects quite a different sentiment. There was a time where many hoped for nothing but to escape from this village because they saw nothing but death lingering for them here. In the 17th century, the bubonic plague struck London, traveling to Eyam via parcel to a tailor's house. Over the next few years, over 250 Eyam villagers would die, and it has since been known as the Plague Village. That is not what strikes me most about this place. The plague affected most of Europe and Asia, outbreaks taking place over numerous centuries since the 1300s. Eyam was no different, except for the fact that the entire village agreed to quarantine themselves in order to prevent further spread of the disease, knowing, of course, that this damned so many of them to inevitable, painful deaths. Still, they trudged forward, and this little village, because of its sacrifice, saved many, many lives by preventing further contamination in Derbyshire. I often watch television dramas set back in the 17th and 18th centuries, hoping to somehow imagine what the reality of living back then would have felt like. But there is no way of truly knowing, and there is no way, I don't think, of truly feeling connected with these people, even though they were capable of feeling the same pains of loss and fear and horror that we might feel even now. But I thank God that some part of me might never know what it feels like to walk through the streets of Eyam desperate to flee. That I don't know what it feels like to fear death knocking at my door, taking my life or my loved ones through a horrible, gruesome, incurable illness. That I've never lived in a town where we have all been asked to make such a fatal sacrifice. I read about those things on plaques in museums and walk past the homes marking the loss of entire families, and I'm filled with a mixture of awe and confusion. I think it's important to know what happened in the lives of people who lived in the centuries before us, because I think it's good to remember that history is not simply a collection of stories in books, but a living, breathing reality that has left its fingerprints on our lives. But I also think it's important to look forward, to appreciate the things we no longer need suffer because of the hearts and minds and bodies of those who walked the streets we are now walking. To remember that our humanity never changes, but thankfully, our circumstances do. Ooh, I was gonna sit down there. I don't know if you guys can see that. Try and focus it in. Check that out. Ooh, that was originally not mud.